Whatever you think the role of government should be, I think most people would say, in a rich country like ours, government must help the poor, try to lift people out of poverty. Well, our government's sure been trying. America now spends about $40,000 a year on every family of four below the poverty line. Think about it, $40,000 a year. You could just cut them a check for that and they'd be out of poverty. Yet they're not out of poverty. Millions still line up for welfare checks. What the government's accomplished with its anti-poverty money is not impressive.
Despite the massive welfare state, the same complaints occur year after year that there are the homeless, there are the poor children. Well, if the government is so good at this, why is it failing all the time?
Now, the trillions we've spent certainly have helped some people. When you spend that much, you're bound to help some.
Thank you.
The real question is this the best way to help poor people? Instead of ending poverty, the government's war on poverty has created generations of dependent people.
Ready to change, ma'am?
But what's the alternative? If government doesn't help those in need, who will? Well, look at Delancey Street. It's a collection of society's worst. 500 former street people, drug addicts, ex-cons. 18 felony convictions is the average here. Now, here in San Francisco, they live together, work together, and help each other out. That's what saved them, they say. Brotherhood, not handouts. A former car thief, Eric Hartman, teaches ex-con Christina Esparza a job he recently learned, the food business. She, in turn, teaches him what she learned about accounting. Christina says she's been in every prison in California.
I basically just broke every law that I could break. Robberies, kidnaps, guns.
The government put her through lots of rehab programs, but nothing worked until she came here.
Ta-da!
They say Delancey Street works where other programs failed because it's mutual aid, the needy helping the needy.
Pull this around like this.
The residents have built the biggest independent moving company in the Bay Area.
Welcome to Delancey Street.
A fine restaurant, a catering service,
Double lattes to go?
a beautiful cafe, bookstore,
Did you get that little screwdriver I was talking about?
this auto repair shop, and they built the apartment complex where they all live on San Francisco Bay. Now, this mutual aid idea is not new. In the 1920s, 30% of American men belonged to mutual aid societies. They were especially popular among minorities. They helped people pay for doctors, build orphanages, cooked for the poor. Instead of a government handout, which tends to make people dependent, mutual aid meant neighbors helping neighbors. So they made sure their money was used to teach self-sufficiency. Yet today, there are fewer mutual aid societies, like Habitat for Humanity, because government crowded them out. Many people say, why do it ourselves when $400 billion of our tax money and hundreds of government programs do it already? This is a tragedy because, as Delancey Street shows, mutual aid works better.
You know, they make you accountable for what you do. They didn't do that at the other program. It was just, your anger, you're very angry, let's talk about that. And they did that for 9 months. It was like, okay, I thought it was a joke.
Mabel, stand up!
13,000 people have now been through Delancey Street, but it wasn't easy because, surprisingly, government kept getting in the way.
We have had to fight every bureaucracy that exists because we don't fit what you're supposed to do.
Mimi Silbert, who started Delancey Street, says government rules have been an obstacle to their achievements because she doesn't employ certified teachers and drug counselors. The bureaucratic red tape, she says, could ruin anything.
If Jesus Christ walked in today and wanted to start Christianity, he wouldn't be able to do it because they say to him, you need 2 psychiatrists, you need 1 social worker, somebody has to sign the things. Get the government to understand when something good is happening, step out of the way.
But private charities kept telling us government's often in the way. Here in Houston, Carol Porter started feeding poor people.
I was feeding children who were eating out of dumpsters. I never would imagine scenes like that in America.
She and her volunteers serve 20,000 meals a week.
People think unless they do something big, huge, enormous, they're not making a contribution, but you are. What makes community-based programs work versus government, you know the people. You get involved in their lives. you know their names.
Hello, Erica.
And when someone at Kid Care needs assistance, we don't have to do a form and triplicates. We give the service right then and there.
Despite her good work, at one point her charity was almost killed by government regulations.
Over 16 years ago, I applied for a government grant and we were accepted. Well, boy, was I in for a revelation.
The government grant came with so many rules, like the milk rule.
Even though the child may not drink the milk, I had to place it in front of them. So I was throwing 60 and 70 containers of milk in the garbage every day.
Other rules limited what she could serve, when she could serve it, who she could serve it to. So many rules she just gave up.
We just shut down the program.
How are you today?
A month later, she tried again, but this time without government funds. But the government still wouldn't leave her alone. They said charities must abide by the same rules as restaurants. They demanded she cover the beams in her ceiling, that she get a special sink to clean mops and a vented hood for the stove where she made home-cooked meals.
The vented hood is for the purpose of containing grease fires, and we never fried anything. What did I need a mop sink for? My mop was much cleaner because I washed it in my washing machine.
Come on, hey there.
This is insane. No one should put any obstacles in the pathway of anyone who goes out of their own pocket, who goes out of their way to do good.
Got that? Hold it tight. Got it?
She didn't want to remodel. She wanted to spend all the money on the kids. But the government wouldn't let up.
You prefer the children eating garbage can cuisine versus my home cooking? I couldn't believe it.
Eventually, the government offered her a deal.
Let's settle this out of court, Mrs. Porter, and you could do 200 hours of community service. I said, get a life. I do community service every day.
But eventually, Carol gave in. She got that mop sink and a special new ceiling.
Here, sweetie.
And stopped serving hot meals.
But the government was standing there with his sword at the gate and saying, if you do these things, I've got a list of 500 regulations you must adhere to, or off with your head.
Government thinks it knows best. But ask yourself, if you want to help the poor, do you write a check to the government, or do you give your money to a private charity, someone like Carol Porter? There are only two ways to do things in life, voluntarily or because you're forced to. Government's the only institution in America that's allowed to use force, that has a legal right to make you do things. And everything government does, every regulation, every tax it imposes, is backed up by force or the threat of it in one form or another. Sometimes the force comes in the form of a bulldozer. That's what's threatening this neighborhood in New Rochelle, New York. It's what you might call a mixed neighborhood. There are 2 thriving churches, 34 homes, 28 businesses. It's very diverse.